Okay, so yeah, thanks for your patience, thanks for waiting, and good afternoon again from Hamburg. My name is Moritz Lukas, and I'll be the host of today's webinar that is called One Stop Shop for Shopify merchants. So we are very happy that we are able to organize this webinar in cooperation with Shopify. And so glad to have so many participants in today's webinar. So warm welcome to all participants and warm greetings from Hamburg. So what are we going to do in the next 60 minutes? We are going to talk about the most important reform regarding value-added tax that we've seen in decades in the European Union. And before we start, here's a couple of things in terms of organization. First of all, we will have a recording of this webinar. So basically, you will be able to access the recording after the webinar in order to check all the details again. Also, we will be happy to provide you with the slides of today's webinar. So you do not need to take too many notes today, but just can access our slides after the webinar. And the webinar will take approximately 60 minutes. And I will try to give you as much room as possible for your questions, because of course it's very interesting to see what your questions are on this relevant topic. Before I start, I would quickly hand over to Roman from Shopify, who wants to say hello to you as well.
Okay. Can everybody?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hear me? Great. So, hi, I'm Roman Senna from Shopify. I'm a technical partner manager for the EMEA region. I'm so happy to welcome you all to this webinar, and thanks, Morris, for setting this up. So basically, we are obviously, as a platform, our mission is to make it, very easy for merchants and partners to be compliant, and we've prepared something for you, so to be compliant in terms of what this new regulation is gonna bring to us. So I will at the end briefly, I can actually send more some information, or I can also share something with you to show you what we've as Shopify have planned to make lives easier for you guys. Well, other than that, happy to welcome you, and now over to Moritz again.
Thanks so much, Roman. And then, yeah, I suggest we get started right away. So just a couple of details. So again, my name is Moritz Lukas. I'm a vice president at Tax2. At Tax2, we focus on the value-added tax compliance for online merchants that are active in the European Union. And many of our customers are actually Shopify merchants. And for them, we provide kind of a digital one-stop shop for VAT compliance in the European Union. So the topic we are discussing today, that's our daily business, because it directly affects the VAT compliance of online merchants, in particular Shopify merchants in the European Union. Should there be any questions that are not answered in today's webinar, please also feel free to reach out directly to me. You can reach me at moritz.lukas@tax2.com. So please feel free to approach me with any questions you might have, and I'm happy to answer them. Yeah, so just if we do not get to all questions in the webinar, just feel free to contact me right afterwards. Here's a quick agenda for today. So 3 key points that I want to highlight today. I want to very quickly point out in the beginning the status quo of the so-called distance selling thresholds, or I could also say briefly describe how does VAT compliance for Shopify merchants look today. Because I think that understanding the situation today is a prerequisite for really understanding what is going to change starting on July 1st, 2021. So that's in 2 weeks. Yeah. So based on that, in the second step, I will point out what is really new about the VAT rules that come into effect on July 1st, 2021. So I will spend some time discussing the new rules. And then the focus will be on the third part, the introduction of a so-called one-stop shop. I'm pretty sure that most of you have heard about the one-stop shop over the past weeks or months, because it's the topic that is typically associated with this huge reform that we are seeing on July 1st, 2021. And my goal here is to point out what the one-stop shop really brings about in terms of changes. And some of these changes will be kind of, I would argue, will be positive for you as Shopify merchants. Other changes might be less positive because they might increase actual complexity of VAT compliance. And in the end, I will provide you with a detailed checklist of the most relevant to-dos over the next 2 weeks until the one-stop shop comes into effect on July 1st. Yeah, so that's the quick agenda for today. If you want to ask questions, please use the F&A functionality in Zoom, or Q&A in the English version. Please use that in order to type your questions, and I will try to answer some of them right in between the different topics if they just fit in there, and otherwise I will take them at the end of a webinar where we have lots of room for your questions. Yeah, so just type your questions into the Q&A or F&A function in Zoom, and I will try to answer them as much as possible. Let's see how many questions there will be. So first point is the status quo, the current status of the so-called distance selling thresholds, because this is really important to understand what is going to change on July 1st, 2021. I'm pretty sure that most of you are somewhat familiar with this topic. So currently we have the following situation in the European Union that affects basically every online seller. Yeah, also you as Shopify merchants. And the key about the current status are the so-called distance selling thresholds. The goal of these distance selling thresholds is to relieve small and medium-sized enterprises from the danger that they might be VAT liable in any European country. Yeah, because especially for smaller and medium-sized enterprises, becoming VAT liable in every other EU country is very, very costly and would not really be a profitable way of doing business. And this is why for many years now, we've seen the so-called distance selling thresholds in the European Union, meaning that if as an online seller, you sell B2C cross-border to customers in other European countries, you can actually file your returns in your home country as long as you remain below these distance selling thresholds. So for example, as a German Shopify merchant, you can file your returns in Germany, also for those sales that you do with French customers, as long as you remain below the distance selling thresholds. And until now, this means until July 1st, the distance selling threshold are country specific. So they are defined on a country level in the European Union. And for most European countries, they are as high as 35,000 euros net revenue per calendar year. So as a German Shopify merchant, for example, when you sell your goods to French private customers cross-border B2C, you can basically file these returns to the German fiscal authorities as long as you remain below the 35,000 euros net revenue per calendar year. Yeah, so most EU countries so far have a distance selling threshold of 35,000 euros per calendar year. Some countries have higher thresholds. For example, Germany has a threshold of 100,000 euros. But the key point here is that every EU country currently has such a distance selling threshold, and it's a country-specific one. Yeah, this is really key to understanding the changes that the reform will bring about. Yeah, and again, up to the limit of the distance selling threshold, yeah, you can basically declare and pay your VAT to your local fiscal authorities. Yeah, so as long as you remain below the 35,000 euros to France, for example, everything can be filed to the German fiscal authorities. Yeah, so far so good. This is the mechanism behind the distance selling thresholds. Only when you exceed the distance selling threshold, you must switch the whole thing, because once you exceed the distance selling threshold, you must tax your revenues in the country of destination and no longer in the country of origin. Yeah, so coming back to our example of Germany and France, when you exceed the 35,000 euros net revenues per calendar year to French customers, then in this moment of the exceedance, you need to register for VAT in France. And from that point on, you need to submit your VAT returns to the French fiscal authorities and no longer to the German fiscal authorities. So from that point on, you need to declare 20% French VAT on these sales and no longer 19% German VAT rate. Yeah, and this mechanism so far has been very convenient for online sellers because it prevented you from having to register for VAT in every EU country. Yeah, because the prerequisite for actually becoming liable for VAT in another EU country has been to exceed the distance selling threshold. So meaning having at least 35,000 euros of revenue to the respective other EU country. Yeah, this means as long as you remained below all distance selling threshold, basically you only had to declare your VAT duties to the German fiscal authorities if you're a German Shopify merchant. Yeah, so far, this has been the key to understanding VAT compliance in the European Union. So this is, I think, key to understanding the changes in the next step that the reform will bring about. Yeah. Again, every EU country has such a distance selling threshold, and in most cases, it's 35,000 euros per calendar year. In some cases, it's even higher. And only once you exceed the threshold, you need to register for VAT in the country of destination. And from that point on, you basically need to file your returns in the country of destination and no longer in the country of origin. Now, here are the new rules starting as of July 1st, 2021. So the mechanism that I've just been explaining, the distance selling threshold, this mechanism will be eliminated starting July 1st, 2021. So this mechanism, yeah, that prevented you from having to VAT register in all other EU countries is eliminated in 2 weeks. Yeah, so for every B2C sale you do to another EU country, these distance selling threshold in the future will no longer be valid. There will be in the future only one global EU-wide threshold of 10,000 euros of revenues per calendar year for all B2C cross-border sales within the European Union. Yeah, because as I said before, the distance selling thresholds were defined per country. Now we only have one EU-wide threshold of 10,000 euros revenue per calendar year. So this is a substantial change because if you sum up your sales that you do cross-border B2C to other EU countries, I'm pretty sure that many of you will have this sum of 10,000 euros within a couple of days or weeks. So this means this former system of country-specific distance selling threshold is replaced by one single European distance selling threshold, meaning that if your European cross-border B2C sales in sum, not per country, in sum, exceed 10,000 euros per calendar year, then from this point on, you will always be liable for VAT in the country of destination. So I'll give you a brief example. Suppose you are selling 3,000 euros to France, 4,000 euros to Spain, and 5,000 euros to Italy. Then in sum, these revenues exceed 10,000 euros. And from that point on, you are liable for VAT in any EU country in which you ship at least one parcel. Yeah. So in this situation, if you assume that the next parcel is not shipped to France, but maybe to Malta or Romania, then you need to file your returns for these countries in Malta or Romania. Yeah, because the distance selling threshold, 10,000 euros in sum, has been exceeded. And since this new threshold of 10,000 euros in sum is basically close to nothing, at Texto, we typically say that these new rules mean that from the first parcel you ship to another EU country, in the future, you will be liable for VAT in the country of destination, no matter whether that's France or Italy or Spain or Malta or Romania or any other European country. Yeah, so the new threshold of 10,000 euros per calendar year is basically close to nothing. For most sellers, it will be exceeded within a couple of days or weeks. So basically, we can just say the former system of distance selling thresholds is eliminated. And although there is a new kind of threshold that replaces this former system of thresholds, basically in sum, there is no actual threshold because 10,000 euros in sum is really close to nothing. Yeah, so this is the key change that the new regulations will bring about: the elimination of the country-specific distance selling thresholds that are replaced by one single EU-wide selling threshold of 10,000 euros. And once you've exceeded these 10,000 euros per calendar year, you become liable for VAT from the first euro on in any country of destination in the European Union. Now, this sounds horrible. Yeah, this sounds horrible because, I mean, what is the purpose of this reform? Why would you want to make an online seller become liable for VAT in every EU country after passing this initial 10,000 euro threshold? So what's the purpose of this? Does this not render everything much more complex? Yeah, so at first sight, this reform sounds really horrible and threatening. Now, what I've just been describing, the elimination of the country-specific distance selling thresholds, this is one of two main parts of this reform. And the second main part of this reform, this is the introduction of a so-called one-stop shop. And this is now the relatively good news. Yeah, so the elimination of the country-specific distance selling thresholds is rather bad news. But the good news is that the second large part of this reform is a true simplification. And this simplification is the so-called one-stop shop. Yeah? The term one-stop shop means that you as a Shopify merchant that becomes liable in other European countries for VAT has only one single point of contact in the future to actually do your VAT filings. Yeah. So the basic idea is that you as a Shopify merchant will be able from July 1st on to declare all your B2C cross-border sales and also pay the relevant VAT via your local one-stop shop. Yeah. And if you pay your VAT duties in the future to your local one-stop shop, then your local tax authorities will just forward these returns and payments to the respective EU states. So let's just have a look at a quick example. Let's assume you're a Shopify merchant based in Germany. You ship your goods to many other European countries, France, Italy, Spain. Then, after exceeding this initial threshold of 10,000 euros that I've just been discussing, after that, you become liable for VAT in every country of destination, be it France, be it Spain, be it Italy, be it Malta, be it Romania, or whatever. But the key change here is that all the VAT declarations and all the VAT payments do no longer need to be made via local VAT registrations in the country of destination, but via your local one-stop shop. Yeah. So the one-stop shop is simply one single point of contact, for example, for you as a German Shopify merchant, where you can basically fulfill all your EU-wide VAT duties. Yeah. So for example, in Germany, it's the Bundeszentralamt für Steuern. And in other countries, it's the respective other fiscal authority to which you provide this one single VAT filing. Yeah. So to put this very clearly, you are still liable for VAT in the respective country of destination, but the actual VAT filing and the VAT payment are made via the so-called one-stop shop in your home country. Yeah. So for example, as a German Shopify merchant, you make this in Germany to the Bundeszentralamt für Steuern via the so-called one-stop shop. Or if you're a Shopify merchant based in France, you have a one-stop shop via your French local fiscal authority, where you basically declare all your EU-wide VAT liabilities and make your EU-wide VAT payments. Yeah. So this is the great simplification about the reform. Yeah. So as I said, what is a bit negative is that the country-specific distance selling thresholds are eliminated. But the positive thing is that you do no longer need to VAT register once you become liable for VAT in another EU country, but you can basically fulfill all your VAT duties right in your home country via the so-called one-stop shop. This means from July 1st on, every EU country will provide the OSS infrastructure to their domestic online merchants. So for example, in Germany, that's the Bundeszentralamt für Steuern that provides the one-stop shop infrastructure for Shopify and other merchants based in Germany. So how does it work in detail? Starting from July 1st on, you can submit your VAT returns on a quarterly basis via your local one-stop shop. So again, as a German Shopify merchant, for example, you do this via the online portal of the Bundeszentralamt für Steuern, and you do this on a quarterly basis. So OSS filings are made on a quarterly basis. And the payment deadline is 1 month after the end of the reporting period. This means the very first one-stop shop filing will be for the months July, August, and September. And this filing will be due in October 2021. And this is also when the payment will be due. Yeah, so it's a quarterly filing frequency. Also, what is also important to note, once you decide to use the one-stop shop, it's optional, by the way, but for basically every online seller, it will make sense to use the one-stop shop. But if you decide to use the one-stop shop, there are no more obligations to actually issue invoices for these sales that are reported via the one-stop shop. Again, the actual payment is also made to your local fiscal authority. So there's only one clearing office, and you do no longer have to make bank transfers to other EU states in other currencies whatsoever, but you simply pay all your VAT duties in your home country, and your home country fiscal authority then forwards these payments to the other authorities in the respective EU countries. Also, in the future, should there be any corrections of OSS filings that might be required, such corrections can be made within a future OSS filing. So corrections will be very, very simple to make in the future. So that's the good news here. Just a couple of operational details of how the one-stop shop will actually work. What is important to note is that this great simplification of a one-stop shop comes with a couple of challenges. And one key challenge is the determination of the EU VAT rates. So let me quickly go back here. When you ship your goods to other EU countries, once you exceed the 10,000 euros initial selling threshold, you become liable for VAT in the country of destination. As I said, the respective filing is done in your home country via the OSS. But still, in this filing to the OSS, you need to declare country by country at which VAT rate you owe which VAT payments to the respective state. And this means that for every country of destination in the European Union, you basically need to know the VAT rates that apply to your products. So basically, right from euro 1 on, after exceeding this distance selling threshold of 10,000 euros, you basically need to be able to determine your VAT rates in every EU country to which you ship at least one parcel. And this is especially important if you sell goods that are taxed at reduced VAT rates. So for example, if you sell goods that, for example, in Germany are not taxed at 19%, but at the reduced rate of 7%. As you know, basically every EU country has a reduced tax rate, and many EU countries even have several reduced tax rates. So it is not really clear which tax rates apply to your products in other EU countries. And with a one-stop shop, you need to clearly determine which rates apply to your products in which countries. The good news is there is a European database that is daily updated, and this database delivers the respective VAT rates. So you can actually access this database and determine the VAT rates on your products. And the prerequisite for doing that is typically the customs tariff number. The customs tariff number is kind of a unique identifier that can be used to determine the respective VAT rate on your product. Again, you do all the VAT filing via the OSS in your home country. But in this filing, you need to declare country by country, tax rate by tax rate, which revenues you have made with customers in other European countries. And this is why basically for all your products that you ship to other European countries, after exceeding the 10,000 euros, you need to know the respective VAT rates. Previously, the country-specific distance selling thresholds prevented you from this problem. So basically, only very few sellers, for example, in the past exceeded the country-specific distance selling threshold to Romania, for example. So basically, most online sellers didn't have to deal with VAT rates in Romania. But now this changes. Once the 10,000 euros EU-wide distance selling threshold is exceeded and you ship one parcel to Romania, then you basically need to determine what is the VAT rate that applies to my products in Romania, because you need to have this information available in order to do the OSS filing in your home country. Otherwise, you cannot do a complete VAT filing. And again, the customs tariff number is kind of a unique identifier that can be used to determine the respective VAT rates, product by product, country by country, for example, in the official European database. So challenge number one. Challenge number two. The examples I've been using so far have been very simple ones. So far I've been assuming, let me quickly go back. So far I've just been assuming that, for example, as a German Shopify merchant, you basically ship your goods to other European countries, cross-border, and that's it. Of course, in the light of today's infrastructure in e-commerce, that's a very simple setup. Because of course, what many merchants, of course, these days do is they use fulfillment centers or warehouses in other European countries. Yeah, so there are providers that offer such fulfillment structures. Maybe some of you have own warehouses in other European countries, but many merchants these days make use of such fulfillment structures or warehouses in other European countries. Yeah, of course, you're closer to the customer. Yeah, you have a higher delivery speed and so on and so forth. So there are many reasons to actually use local warehouses in other European countries. Now, why am I telling you this? Because as soon as you use a local warehouse outside your home country, you are still liable for VAT in this country where the warehouse is located. And this is something that cannot be covered by the one-stop shop. So for example, as a German Shopify merchant that uses a warehouse in France, for example, this makes you immediately VAT liable in France, but this VAT liability cannot be filed via the OSS in Germany. But once you use the French warehouse, you still need to have a French VAT number. You need to be VAT registered in France and need to make local VAT filings in France. And the same applies to every EU country in which you use a local warehouse. Yeah, no matter whether it's your own warehouse or whether it's a third-party provider or whatever. As soon as you use a warehouse in another EU country, you still need to have a local VAT registration in this country, and you need to have local VAT filings in that country. So this type of structure cannot be reported in your home country by the OSS. And this basically means that in the end, as an online seller, basically you have two strands of reporting in parallel. Yeah, so you will have on the one hand the OSS reporting strand, where you can actually declare your distance sales to countries in which you are not using local warehouses. Yeah, so this is the left-hand side on this chart. But at the same time, on the right-hand side here, there are still transactions that need to be filed locally in the respective EU country. And most of these transactions basically are connected with the usage of local warehouse structures in other European countries. So for those countries in which you use local warehouses, you still need to be VAT registered and you still need to have local VAT filings. And this is kind of the second compliance strand in parallel to what you can do via the OSS. Yeah, so basically you have two compliance strands that run in parallel in the future as soon as you have warehouses in other European countries. Here's a quick example of how that might look like. So let's assume you're a German Shopify merchant. You're based in Germany. And for specific reasons, you make use of a warehouse in Poland, for example. And from this Polish warehouse, you sell to a Polish customer. Then in this constellation, there are no OSS filings that apply. It is only local filings that are relevant in this constellation. So basically everything that is shipped from you as a German merchant to the Polish warehouse is filed locally in Germany. And then the sale that occurs from the Polish warehouse to the Polish customer is filed locally in Poland. And none of these transactions is reported via the one-stop shop, although in the end, a sale occurs from a German merchant to a Polish customer, cross-border B2C. But still, no OSS filing applies here, and this is due to the usage of a Polish warehouse. Yeah, example number one. Example number two, it's pretty much related to the previous example. The only change is that the customer is no longer based in Poland, but in any other European country. In this case, the situation is slightly different. In this case, the sale from the Polish warehouse to the customer, for example, in France, must be declared via the OSS. Yeah, because this is now a cross-border transaction from Poland to a customer, for example, in France. So this part of the transaction must actually be declared by the OSS. Third example, as a German Shopify merchant, you ship to a Polish warehouse, and from the Polish warehouse, a sale occurs to a German customer. So in the end, this is a sale from a German merchant to a German customer. But since this sale is fulfilled from the Polish warehouse, the actual sale is reported via the OSS. And that's kind of counterintuitive, because in the end, a German online merchant sells to a German customer, but some part of this transaction is actually reported via the OSS. So it's rather counterintuitive, but this is how the new structure actually looks like once we have cross-border fulfillments. Yeah, just 3 simple examples that make clear that these new rules are not as simple as they might look like in the beginning. Yeah, but let me quickly go back to this chart. For those of you that do not use local warehouses in other European countries, basically only the left-hand part applies from July 1st on. Yeah. So for those of you, for example, that are German Shopify merchants without any warehouses in other European countries, basically only the left-hand part here is relevant, then the one-stop shop is really a great simplification of your monthly VAT filings. And for those of you that additionally use warehouses in some European countries, those of you in addition have to deal with local VAT registrations, local VAT filings in those countries in which you use these warehouses. Then you really have these 2 reporting strands running in parallel. This means for some sellers, it's a great simplification, this new reform with the OSS. In particular, for those Shopify merchants that are not using warehouses in other European countries. Yeah. So for those Shopify merchants that only ship from the home country, the OSS is really a great simplification, because basically right from July 1st on, you can report all your distant sales to other European countries via your local one-stop shop. And for those of you that are a bit more complex in terms of their logistics structures, meaning that are using warehouses in other European countries, it's only a partly simplified process, but also partly, kind of an old-fashioned process that still requires local VAT registrations and local VAT filings in those countries in which you use the respective warehouses. So to sum that up very, very quickly, I've been starting by saying that this reform that we will be seeing on July 1st, 2021, basically eliminates the country-specific distance selling thresholds that we've been seeing so far. Yeah, so far we had a distance selling threshold to France, a distance selling threshold to Spain, and a distance selling threshold to Italy. So every EU country had this country-specific distance selling threshold. And these country-specific distance selling thresholds are abolished and come into effect on July 1st. Yeah, so on July 1st, these country-specific distance selling thresholds are replaced by one single European distance selling threshold of 10,000 euros in sum across all European countries. So as I said, this 10,000 euro new revenue threshold will be something that most of you, will have reached within a couple of days or weeks, probably. And once you've passed this initial distance selling threshold of 10,000 euros, you basically are tax liable from euro number 1 on. And this means you are basically taxable in the country of destination from the first euro on, no matter whether this country is Spain, France, Italy, Bulgaria, Malta, Portugal, or whatever. Yeah. The good news about the reform is it brings about a great simplification, and this simplification is the one-stop shop. Yeah, a one-stop shop is the idea that as a Shopify merchant, for example, based in Germany, you can do all your VAT filings for all European countries to one point of contact, and this is the fiscal authority in your home country. So for example, for German Shopify merchants, the Bundeszentralamt für Steuern. So you do no longer need to locally register for VAT in other European countries, but you can do one single VAT filing to your home fiscal authorities on a quarterly basis starting on July 1st, 2021. Last point I want to make here is a quick checklist of the most relevant to-dos before July 1st. So we still have 2 weeks time. And based on what I've said, what are your most relevant to-dos? First, make sure that you can automatically determine the tax rates for all European countries to which you ship your goods after July 1st, 2021. Yeah, as I said, of course, you can use the OSS to do your VAT filings in the future. However, you need to split country by country and VAT rate by VAT rate, how much revenue you made with a respective country. And in order to do that, you really need to know which tax rates apply to your products in which EU country. And if you're not yet sure which tax rates apply in other European countries, please use the remaining time until July 1st to determine these tax rates. One way of doing so is the official EU database, in which the customs tariff number can basically be used to determine the VAT rates. Second point, in many European countries, it is now possible to register for the OSS. So for example, in Germany, it is possible to sign up for the OSS since April 1st. It's the online portal that has been created by the Bundeszentralamt für Steuern in Germany, for example, and basically you can already register now. And what is important to note, if you are not registered for the OSS on July 1st, you will not be able to make the very first OSS filing for the first quarter in 2021. Yeah, so if you want to use the OSS, please make sure you register before July 1st. Third point, based on what I said, if you actually use warehouses outside your home country, then you should make sure that you can clearly split the distance sales happening to other European countries and report these via the OSS, but that you can also clearly identify in which countries you are using local warehouses and make sure that these transactions related to those warehouses are still reported locally in those European countries with a local VAT registration. Yeah, so for those of you that are using warehouses outside your home country, please make sure to really know which warehouses you use and which transactions you can declare via the OSS and which transactions you still need to declare locally in other European countries with a local VAT registration after July 1st. And this is the final point that is somewhat related. Since this is kind of a complex split to make, yeah, you should make sure that there are no transactions that are reported twice, meaning via the OSS on the one hand and the local registration on the other hand, because this would be too costly and you would pay more VAT than required. But at the same time, you should also make sure that there are no transactions that you do not report at all. Yeah, because this is the more dangerous case in which you somehow just forget to report a transaction, and then you forget to pay VAT on this transaction, and this is can get extremely costly. So just a very, very quick checklist, and you should basically make sure that you can, can you actually check all these 4 points before July 1st, 2021. 15 days left. This is just the counter. It's just a screenshot from this morning from our one-stop shop information site. So 15 days 2 weeks left to actually make the necessary preparations for the reform. So use that time and have all the preparations in place before July 1st, 2021. That would be my most important advice to you. So again, if there are any questions that I will not answer in the remaining time today, please feel free to reach out to me directly, moritz.lukas@texto.com. I'm happy to answer your questions. Thanks so far for your attention, and then let me check whether there are any questions coming in. So one question regards the threshold of 10,000 euros of one question regards the threshold of 10,000 euros. So there is this new EU-wide distance selling threshold of 10,000 euros that I've been talking about. And this is the only way in which you do not need to deal with tax rates in other European countries, meaning as long as you remain below those 10,000 euros in a calendar year, you can basically declare all your you can basically file all your VAT declarations in your home country with a local VAT rate. Yeah. So as long as you remain below 10,000 euros revenues with other EU countries, you basically just use the VAT rate of your home country. But once you exceed the 10,000 euros, you need to actually use the VAT rate of the respective country of destination. Yeah. And these 10,000 euros are meant per calendar year. Yeah. And now, importantly, we are now in 2021. This new threshold of 10,000 euros applies backward looking to 2020. And also it applies starting January 1st, 2021. So those of you that had more than 10,000 euros in revenues to other European countries in 2020 already need to do the VAT filing via the one-stop shop starting on July 1st. And the same is true if you had more than 10,000 revenues with other European countries starting January 1st, 2021. Yeah, so these 10,000 euros are also backward looking for whole 2020 and also for 2021. And these 10,000 euros revenue threshold are the only valid threshold. There's no additional threshold of any other type. Yeah. As long as you remain below the threshold, use your local tax rate. So as a German Shopify merchant, 19% or 7%. Once you exceed the 10,000 euros, then you need to use the VAT rate of the country of destination, whatever that might be in the European Union. Then another question, what has to be done to decide to use the OSS? Is there some kind of registration necessary? As I said, the OSS is generally speaking optional. Yeah, I mean, for basically every online seller, the use of the OSS will make sense. There might be setups in which a local VAT registration and local VAT filings are still required. But if you decide to use the OSS, you should now register online for the OSS. And this really depends on your home country. So as I said, in Germany, this means you should now register via the online portal of the Bundeszentralamt für Steuern. And in other European countries, it's the respective portal offered by your local fiscal authorities. There are rumors that not every EU country has currently already opened this online portal. So there might be European countries in which registration is not yet possible. But typically the registration in your home country typically is the active decision to use the OSS starting on July 1st, 2021. Then next question, what if I declared VAT to my local authority for months while staying below 10,000 euros, but then surpassed 10,000 euros? Yeah. So this is typically the principle of distance selling thresholds and also of the new threshold. All the revenues that you make, as long as you are below this threshold, just taxed in your home country with the local VAT rate. And only those revenues occurring after the exceedance of the distance selling threshold need to be taxed with the VAT rate of the country of destination. But of course, once you exceed the threshold, you do no longer need to adapt all the things that happened before passing the 10,000 euros. So everything that happened before passing the 10,000 euros remain as they were. You only need to change the VAT rate once you exceed the distance selling threshold, starting with the one transaction that led to the exceedance of the distance selling threshold. There are some technical Shopify questions as well, and I would suggest that Roman just jumps in and answers some of them.
Yes, thanks so much for the presentation so far. I personally also learned a lot, really. Thanks for this great explanation. So just a couple of Shopify-related things I'd like to answer. So the first one is asking about Shopify invoices. Well, unfortunately, Shopify doesn't produce invoices per se out of the box. So there's always an additional app involved. I suggest you check with those apps you're using, with accounting systems you're using together with Shopify to make sure that the invoices you produce are actually compliant. So that would be my answer to this question. And then there's a question regarding the VAT rates for different countries. Well, I have to say, unfortunately, we don't have yet, this automatism where we can, automatically match products to VAT rates on an EU level. I think the main reason being that it's quite hard to actually make this on the technological level because we don't know all the, the tariff numbers that Moritz was just mentioning. So yeah, from the Shopify perspective, out of the box, we don't support this automatic matching of tax rates. And then probably the last thing that has Shopify in there is about registration. So if you're registered to Shopify, this doesn't mean that automatically you also registered to OSS. This is I guess a separate process that you have to take in order to get everything sorted. I think those were the only Shopify related questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Roman. Just checking which additional questions are still most relevant for the remaining minutes. One question that is also frequently asked, and also here, does this regulation apply also by when I'm selling apps? Maybe this term one-stop shop sounds especially familiar for some of you that are active with respect to digital services, because there is a construct called mini one-stop shop that has been existing now for some time already. And the mini one-stop shop is actually the same idea that is behind the one-stop shop, but it's for digital services, and it has been in use for some time now. And starting on July 1st, 2021, the mini one-stop shop for digital services will be integrated into the one-stop shop for physical goods, such that there will only be one one-stop shop that can be used both for physical goods and for digital services. So both will be integrated and form one-stop shop, combining the previous mini one-stop shop and the new one-stop shop for physical goods. Another question is, what if I start to sell in July and I reach the threshold of 10,000 euros in September, but I'm not yet registered for the OSS? Then first filing I could do in principle would be 1st of October. This is correct. But should be no problem because typically, I mean, you cannot basically predict with certainty now which revenues you will make in September or October. So basically, it should be no problem to register then on October 1st and declare these transactions in that filing after October 1st. I think this is a situation that probably some sellers will run into. Yeah. Also, in this respect, it's important to note that now in the transition period, from the former regime to the new regime with a one-stop shop, there are still many questions, and maybe this is already one, that are not yet finally answered by the member states. There are many critical questions that are not yet finally answered by the member states because they haven't fully made up their minds yet. And one question also that is frequently asked also here is, what if I'm already locally VAT registered in another European country? So for example, as a German Shopify merchant, I have an Austrian VAT number since I've passed the Austrian distance selling threshold a couple of years ago. Do I need to register now for July 1st, 2021? For Austria, we know that no, you should not immediately deregister because you still need to prepare your annual VAT filing for Austria. But for other European countries, there are not yet any definite statements from these member states whether to deregister your local VAT number starting on July 1st or not. And I just want to maybe open your mind that you need to be prepared that not all member states have yet fully made up their minds in terms of how does the transition period now look like when transferring from the former regime to the one-stop shop. It's something that has not yet been fully decided. And unfortunately, although this is an EU-wide reform, basically every member state seems to have an own opinion on how to manage that transition period and which rules apply in the transition period. So it's not yet fully clear in all cases, and be prepared that there will be frequent updates in the next days or weeks to come. Yeah, so this is something that is really important to note. It's a complex reform. By the way, this reform was meant to come into effect originally on January 1st, 2021. And due to the corona pandemic, it has been deferred until July 1st, 2021. And some member states even applied for a further deferral because the technical infrastructure for the OSS is basically quite kind of difficult to implement. And countries such as Germany or the Netherlands, for example, wanted to have a further deferral of a reform because the OSS is extremely difficult to implement as a fiscal authority. It's complex, and let's hope it works starting on July 1st. But again, it's a demanding, complex infrastructure, and be prepared that not all member states are perfectly prepared for the new rules and for the infrastructure of the OSS. So again, there might be some updates here in the future. Yeah, I think in terms of time, we are here at the end of the webinar. I think there are still some questions that might be left unanswered, unfortunately. But again, please feel free to reach out to me directly. Moritz.lucas@texto.com. I'm happy to answer any further questions you might have. In terms of technical requirements for Shopify, these are of course Shopify related questions, but in terms of any OSS and VAT related questions, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to get back to you as soon as possible. So having said that, again, thank you very much for your attention and for your questions and for the discussion. I hope, I was able to get across some key messages regarding the reform, in particular, what are the key changes of the reform, and second, what are the main to-dos that are left for the remaining 2 weeks until the reform comes into effect on July 1st. So again, my biggest advice here is use the remaining time to do the necessary preparations. And again, if there are any questions, just reach out to me. I'm happy to help, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you. So thanks again. Have a great day, and bye-bye.